All right, welcome in to Big Hitters Only, guys. We have 3 separate interviews today for this podcast. We bring on 2 recent alums of UNC to discuss the news that broke on Thursday that there's a high likelihood the Smith Center, UNC's basketball arena, will be moving to Carolina North, which is down MLK, off campus, which frankly pisses a lot of people off. They don't want it to move off campus. There's a lot of reasons why. A great article by Inside Carolina's Greg Barnes details the reasoning behind that. Build a whole new arena with premium seating, reduce the capacity down to 16,000, obviously more parking, easier in and out if you're away from campus and not down there in the Smith Center. Frankly, it also, you need a revamp. This whole thing, the whole arena needs to be rebuilt. So that's the decision that the administration has made. And then to bring on Neil, Pierre-Louis, and David Ray Allen, 2 guys I know who provide different perspectives on that move by the UNC administration. And then we bring on Andrew Carter of the News Observer, who covered UNC basketball and football for 10 plus years and now is more of a feature writer for the News Observer to talk about the state of UNC basketball, and Hubert Davis and that whole situation. We are brought to you by Delta Spirits. Drink deltaspirits.com. Promo code BHO10. They sell these little canned cocktails, which are great. It's a THC beverage. They have this, which is kind of like a liquor substitute. You can put into a cocktail, into a drink, along with the droppers. BHO10 at checkout. We've been selling a lot of these, which has been great. It's a local Greensboro, Kernersville business. Get a 6-pack of their canned cocktails or buy the bottle, which provides you with that relaxing, alcohol-free Delta 9 THC beverage stuff. Anyway, hope you enjoy this podcast. Remember to rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, follow on Instagram, follow on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and enjoy this podcast focusing on the state of UNC basketball and the move of the Smith Center off campus into a new arena. All right, now we bring on Neil Pierre-Louis, a buddy of mine from Twitter. Never met, actually. First time we're talking, but we've interacted on Twitter. A recent grad of UNC, and I wanted to get more of a, recent alum student perspective on this whole arena thing. You tweeted out just moments ago, we're recording on Thursday, February 13th at 2:35 p.m., just that you're unhappy with the move off campus and upset with the administration. I'm going to give you a platform here. What are your thoughts on the move of the Smith Center off campus?
Yeah, Ross, I'm fired up. Thanks for having me on here. First time meeting. I saw this on Twitter. A lot of my friends were pretty heated discussion the messages about this. Yeah, I don't really understand it. I mean, I do from like the financial perspective. I read the article and it seems like this could bring in a lot of money, but it just doesn't make like any sense for the students whatsoever. Like I saw I'm gonna just go off on Lee Roberts here. I saw his quote that there's nowhere for students to grab food or a beer after a game. Just typical comment from a Duke grad who doesn't know anything about Franklin Street. I'm like, if you knew ball, it'd take you 25, 30 minutes to get to Franklin. Like, if my buddy Matey's watching this, like after every UNC game, meet up at Pirate Captain, grab some ramen, quick walk through one of the most beautiful campuses in this country. Just take a quick cut through the quad. You're there. It's like I don't really understand that point from him. And it's like if there isn't any food there, that's another issue you have to address. South Campus has kind of been a food desert for a while. It's like why is that now, a talking point about this? And it's like I feel like there's obviously complaints about the Dean Dome with the student section, right? Being behind the hoop, not on the sidelines, like a school like Baylor, a lot of these schools do it. But I feel like the complaints, at least my friends and I have had, has never been the location. Like, I personally enjoyed walking there. I even drove there a decent amount of times. I didn't find parking like too difficult in that area. Um, so I don't know. I feel like no student likes this. And that if they were
Yeah.
to do that airport location, it's like, well, one, this makes really no sense for freshmen and sophomores, right? Can't have your car on campus. It's really hard to have a car off campus at that age or that level you're at in school.
Mhm.
And it's like the whole bus thing, I guess that's what they would do, but I can just see that being such an issue. And then someone brought up on Twitter, but definitely see an issue of, people driving drunk to and from the game, depending on how far it is. It's like, I feel like the current setup is great. If you're a student living on campus, you're there, you can just walk pretty easily. And if you're off campus, unless you're like at Lark or Union, which you're already far from class at that point, like, I feel like it was never an issue. It's just like, I've seen a lot of takes. I think just best case scenario is they redo the Dean Dome. I don't think we need to move that far from campus.
Yeah.
I don't get it. So
So I'll push back. I think, yeah, I think they're thinking like rebuilding makes more sense financially than a remodel, like a renovation. So like either rebuilding it where the bowls lot is now, like next to the business school, or off campus. I just think renovating doesn't make sense. So it's going to be rebuilt anyway. I mean, I think it's going to be Carolina North. Um, I mean, I understand. Like, I get all the. It's not great for the students. It's not great. They're obviously going to do a busing system from South Campus. I imagine there'll be buses coming from Franklin. Who knows? But it seems like most people on Twitter are upset with it. But it's just really a weighing the positives and the minuses here. I mean, it's not great for students. It's not great for people living close to campus, but it's better for people coming in from 540. It's better for people parking. I mean, parking down there is pretty bad in South Campus. Like, you're walking pretty far anyway. But I certainly understand the sentiment. I mean, for a freshman or a sophomore living in Morrison or Hinton James, it's definitely a struggle. What else? What else don't you like about it? Like, what would you do though? And knowing it's gonna be a lot better, it's gonna be new, it's gonna be the building and the remodel is gonna be easier with an off campus location. Like, do you understand like that part of it as well? It's truly
yeah,
weighing good and bad.
definitely. Yeah, and I as mad as I am, I definitely understand that there are people who, I mean, clearly they have been thinking about this for a while, and these people have more insight into the financial and a lot of these different aspects more than I do. I think ideally, I like what you said about the bullseye. Like, if they can't renovate, like if they like you said, that's not an option, then building something new just super close, like right there, I think would be ideal. I guess in the meantime, like, you'd still play at the Dean Dome, I assume, right? Since you're not renovating it. I guess my whole idea was just that they would transform it, but like you mentioned, I guess there's just too like it would just cost too much money. So
Yeah.
ideally, it's like I would love to have them renovate it and just play in Carmichael for, I don't know, 1 or 2 years, and it's electric. But
Yeah,
uh,
I would want
that's what I
like
go with.
play a couple games in Carmichael, then play in Charlotte and in Greensboro for a couple seasons, but that's not as realistic either. One other thing though, with a rebuild, they can completely redo how the students sit, and potentially they can make it like a full wraparound or both end zones of the court, and then like put premium seating above that. I mean, they could definitely change it to make it more modern. There's going to be way more premium seating. Maybe it's a better situation for students and getting more students close to the court, and then having like more, the expensive seats a little bit above that, kind of like, I mean, like Cameron is. Or have you ever been to Virginia's court, Virginia Stadium?
No.
Theirs is kind of what I think UNC wants to do. It's about 16,000, and you have more students around there, then premium seating, and then more seating. So it'd be interesting. It definitely is a topic that pisses a lot of people off.
Yeah, I remember they sent out that survey. It might have been a year ago. It wasn't too long ago, but I remember there was a lot of options about like potential, like, packages for premium seating, and then they also asked about the student section. So I mean, yeah, it's like it is one of those things where, I mean, like, I'll be honest, like, we've complained about the student section. I mean, you see me on Twitter complain about it all the time. Like, it's not the students, it's really just, the location and everything. And I don't know, like, I really think it would suck to be off campus, but at the same time, right? Like, if we have something, similar to Baylor, like you mentioned, where the students are on the sideline, more lower bowl, like, that's a positive trade off. Like you mentioned, it's just a lot of things you got to weigh here and there. So,
Yep. No, I mean, I think people off campus is not ideal, but not everything can be perfect. What do you think about Bill Belichick? I know you were done with Mac. What's your give me a Bill Belichick era take?
yeah, that's it's been crazy for me. I'm up in Boston,
Hmm.
working for the Red Sox, and so I was actually at the BC game, which turned out to be Mac's not his last game, but his last game with guaranteed employment. I was out there in 30-degree rain, just watching our team get dog walked, and I was like, I'm done. Like I am. This is terrible. And I remember hearing the rumors about Bill, and initially, like, and you can ask people like close to me, like I was not for it at all. Like I was like, this is so like I don't know. I was just very against it, and then I kind of saw, like getting more NIL, and they're trying to run it more like a professional program. So look, I'm very excited. I think a lot of people's expectations for the first season, I think, are a bit high, but I will say, like, I think our schedule is very winnable, and I mean, you never know. Like in the age of NIL, like there's a lot of programs just making crazy like 1-year turnarounds, and at the very least, like honestly, I would be happy if we went, like 8 or 9 wins, but we're not losing, the Georgia Tech games, the
Mhm.
BC games. Like I just want a team that plays hard. Like I just feel like the last like I don't know, this Mac era, it's just been so much about like I don't know, they just don't have like they don't play hard out there. Like it's like we're so like oh, it's like, oh, we have Georgia Tech today. Like I hope we win this game, or I don't know, they're just not locked in for I forgot the stat, but it was like teams that we were favored by at least double digits, like atrocious record against. Now I feel like Bill will put an end to that. Like I don't know, you saw him at the Patriots, no bullshit type of guy.
Mhm.
And I don't know, it's great publicity for UNC. Like it is kind of crazy. Like I remember when it was first rumored, like all my coworkers are just asking me like, is this happening? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, and then when it went through, like the amount of people that up in Boston that knew I went to UNC, they're just asking about it. They're like, how do you feel? Because all they know like is winning with Belichick with the Patriots. So I'm very excited. I'll be there with my SMU friend at TCU UNC Labor Day this fall. So that's gonna be exciting. Very good
Great.
atmosphere.
Awesome, man. Good to get an opinion here of a younger alum. Follow Neil on Twitter if he'll let you at young_Pierre24. He locked up his Twitter once he started looking for jobs and graduated. But an electric Twitter follow, very funny, very fired up, and a very good fan follow, man. I appreciate your time, dude.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, see you, man. All right, now we bring on David Ray Allen for his perspective. When'd you graduate, David?
2018.
2018 grad, so relatively recent graduate of UNC, a Moorhead Kane scholar, a fan of UNC basketball and football, um, and a local resident. So he's going to a lot of games and immediately thought of you to hit up for perspective on the moving of the Dean Dome of the arena and get your thoughts on that. And then we'll get on into the basketball stuff and maybe some MJ Linderman. What do you think about moving the arena off campus? It's fired people up.
Fire people up. All right. I think it's we find ourselves at this crossroads between tradition and innovation in college basketball right now at multiple levels. And this essentially serves as a microcosm of that same argument. You're going to have people, I'm looking on the tweet of the story. There's 100 comments and 98 of them are negative in favor of tradition. Stay on campus. Let the kids walk to it. Rebuild the stadium. Put it in the bowls lot if you have to. Versus innovation. You see in the article that people, Lee Roberts is saying, move off campus. This needs to make money. It needs to bring the strongest financial return. So I think this is right at the heart of this argument about what is the future of college athletics, college basketball, and specifically for UNC, the rich history of the program versus innovating to survive in this new college landscape that we find ourselves in. What's interesting to me is that, like I said, 98% of the folks who are on this Twitter thread are staying for tradition, which are by and large the same people who are saying we need to innovate and fire Hubert and go get the best coach. So that's where I think we see ourselves right now. I think it's a horrible idea, honestly, like just from a personal perspective, which I guess I'm not saying anything that crazy. But I guess my question for leadership is, what's the mission of this move? Is it to make the most money? Is it to get a mixed use development? Is it to get bars and have people make money that way? Or is it to get the students more involved? What's at the heart of this decision making process?
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a heart versus the head. The heart, of course, once you wanted to stay on campus. It's the beauty of UNC athletics is that football is right in the middle of campus and basketball is, on the southern tip of campus. But then the head, it's not financially feasible to renovate and remodel the Dean Dome. So the other option would be building it right next door. And there's just a lot of challenges at the Bowls lot and things like that. So off campus becomes the next best thing. I think, honestly, I'm not a student, so it doesn't affect me. I don't mind the off campus because I think it allows you to create the exact arena you want, which will be a little bit smaller, maybe better seating for students, maybe more, more wraparound and not just an end zone, maybe two end zones, or maybe a skinnier wraparound like Virginia has. And then premium seating, which is what everyone needs now. You need premium seating to sell to corporations and companies and businessmen and rich donors, so you can make more money off the arena, which UNC doesn't have really at all. They don't have really any premium boxes. You go to newer arenas, they all have boxes around the whole. You can put like 10 people in the boxes. And you get a refrigerator. I mean, I was at Eastern Michigan last year and we had boxes, premium boxes.
Mm-hmm.
They were all sold out, but that's how you generate a lot more money. So I think that's where the mindset's coming from. I guess it's just the struggle between making money versus appeasing college students but I think it's a challenge for parking down there too. Like you come to the game, like where do you park when you and Haley come to the game?
I park at the bell tower lot. I walk through campus. I'm an old man now. You point out I lived in Motown, whatever. But I think that's actually one of the things I'm curious about from a student perspective is if it's a Tuesday night, UNC's playing Syracuse, and maybe you didn't win the lottery. I feel like you're much more likely to walk down and stand in the standby line if it's at the Dean Dome where it is now than to make a 2.5 mile trek to a new place. I don't know. That might be a straw man. Maybe if you want to go to the game, you're going to go to the game either way. I saw somebody said that basically he's not is the exact same distance away, maybe from the Dean Dome as this new place is. So if you want to do a math theory, maybe that's the way to go. But yeah, I think it comes down to the heart of it being transparent and going like, hey, we're trying to innovate in this new age of NIL where we got to make money. And this is the best art. You saw in Greg Barnes' article, he says that Lee Roberts said that this was the strongest financial return that they had is making this move. And if that's the case, then there you go. That's where you have to go. But if it's at the heart of it is we want to make the best atmosphere for students, I think it's a hard case to make that moving off campus is the answer. No offense to our friends in NC State. I don't think PNC has the same environment that it would have if it was at on campus like it used to be. Same thing for UNC. So I think you're going to see an adjustment one way or the other.
I think another way they make money is, I guess they own that land. I guess UNC owns that land. It's the
the old airport lot.
Yeah, I guess it's Chapel Hill own it or does UNC own it? I'm not sure. But you sell or you rent space. Once you acquire that land, you rent space to bars and restaurants. And all of a sudden you have you're making millions of dollars a year on revenue from leasing out 10 bars, 10 restaurants, maybe a little boutique hotel could go in right there. I mean, who knows what it's going to look like. That is a large plot of land. And the accessible for parking and for I-40. I mean, there's a lot of benefits on that side too.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from our buddy Ori or someone else in Chapel Hill because I think that would hurt Franklin Street. I'm imagining the Franklin Street businesses. If you're a fan coming in from out of town and there's 10 bars, 6 restaurants, you're much more likely to stop, eat. I know that's what they're preaching is the convenience of being able to do everything in one place. You're less likely to keep going down MLK and come into Franklin Street, go eat at Cosmic Cantina and stop and get you a t-shirt there. I have to imagine Franklin Street folks are upset about this possibility.
Yeah, it's a great point. If there's a bar right by the stadium, you're going to go to that bar by the stadium instead of trying to park on Franklin, then trying to park again by the stadium. I think they'll set up I imagine there's going to be a bus set up from South Campus, from middle of campus, from North Campus, from Franklin, but that's even more logistics than walking. It's a very interesting topic. I think it's just such an interesting, there's just so many different factors that come into play with students, with alums, with having to raise money, with what, what makes sense logistically, what appeases fans versus what appeases administration versus what the basketball team wants. I think Hubert mentioned just wants to keep it on campus too. I'm not sure it's really his call anymore. All right, let's get into the team. Give me some takes on this basketball team. You're a former DTH writer. That was the one thing I was thinking about in your resume. I forgot I left off. You're a former DTH guy. The team is struggling, coming off a 20-point loss to Clemson. They have a game at Syracuse on Saturday outside the NCAA tournament right now, NCAA tournament bubble. What are your thoughts on this team and this program right now?
Am I wrong to say that we've lost to the teams who are 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the AP Top 25 right now? I think that's the case. I was shocked to see that we were still on the first 4 out on Lenardi's last bubble prediction. Dude, here's the thing. It's the most constipated, least creative offense I've ever seen a UNC team have. And the half court, it's unbearable. I think I said this to you the other day. For a team that like sets 4 screens in every possession, I've never seen somebody. Can we cuss on this?
Oh yeah.
I've never seen somebody half-ass. That's not really cussing. So many screens. Like it's like you don't even if you're trying to get a switch and you don't even get the switch. What's the point in setting the screen? It's not fun. And I want to give Hubert the benefit of the doubt, but nothing has changed throughout the course of the season. The intensity is not there. Clemson was an embarrassment when it came to the intensity. You can't preach that that's the one thing you're going to bring and then not bring it. And yeah, we're a jump shooting team that can't shoot the ball.
Yeah.
Defensively, there's no answer down low. The wings of Powell and Withers are the best you got trying to guard another good forward. Things are not well right now, Ross. That's what I would say. I'd say things are not looking good, which I know I'm not saying anything novel there.
Yeah. What's so bizarre is that the offense looked good last year, I thought, and it looked good when they had Brady Manick. I think there's just pieces that are missing that make the offense look a lot better. I think a corner shooter like Brady Manick or that Cormac Ryan was at times, like that really helps spread things out. And obviously having a big man down low, takes a lot of pressure away from your guards and takes double teams, which allows more open shots. Yeah, and it says on the radio a couple of times, Tuesday, that a team that needs to have really good 3-point shooting, like, is really struggling from three, especially like RJ Davis and stuff. So
here's my question for you though: is in the day and age of the transfer portal, we would say that Hubert has essentially been 50-50. He's hit a couple times and he's failed a couple times. I mean, nobody can deny that Brady Manick was a huge part of UNC's run a couple years ago. Nobody can deny that Harrison Ingram and Cormac Ryan were huge last year. Those are a few great hits that turned UNC into a national championship runner-up and a number 1 seed last year. This year, you don't get it. Or is the anticipation now moving forward that every year you have to hit? And if so, that's a pretty high bar for Hubert to hit, and maybe that gives credence to a general manager coming in, whoever that might be. If it's Jim Tanner, I worked for Jim Tanner one summer when he was at Tandem. I think he would do a great job. Not that my appraisal means anything, but I hope that's who ends up getting the job. So yeah, I'm just very interested to see what happens going forward with this team and in the future of the program.
Yeah, next year they're gonna have to hit like multiple times. Like even if you think back to the Brady Manick year, they missed on Dawson Garcia, even though he's having a really good year this year.
Balling. Dawson Garcia would be lovely to have for UNC right now. Absolutely.
Yeah, he wasn't ready when he came in, and was that 2021, 22, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then there've been misses with Pete Nance this year, especially with Kay Tyson. So yeah, but next year, man, I mean, they may have to get 3 or 4 starters from the portal. So that requires hitting on 3 or 4 people, bringing in 5 or 6 because you can have some depth pieces as well. So it definitely requires better scouting. Like the Kay Tyson, the miss on that is just unbelievable. Like even I mean, I think even the scouts and people that I work with at 24/7 Sports missed on his analysis. He's just not made for the high level ACC basketball.
Right.
Real quick, MJ Linderman. Did you see him last night on Jimmy Kimmel?
Saw him last night on Kimmel.
Did you really? You watch it live?
Yeah. No, I didn't watch. I watched it this morning. Joker Lips was the performance.
Yeah.
If you're a Wilco dad, you need to become an MJ Linderman dad. I literally, can I just say this right quick? I played the beginning of his Tiny Desk concert for my dad, and I said, "Is this someone who can't sing and is trying to start a budding career, or is this the rising indie rock singer?" Because his voice is just—it's an acquired taste. But get into some MJ Linderman, folks. That's what you need.
Yeah, I actually went on a big deep dive this morning, reading some Reddit threads, YouTube rabbit holes, just kind of looking at his past performances. So MJ Linderman's a guy from Asheville, North Carolina. He lived in Greensboro for a bit. I think he's living in the Triangle now, or at least moving to the Durham area, obviously towards he's blowing up. He's like this new, I'd call it alt country, kind of alt rock country definitely has a twang. Has a pedal steel guitar. And I got some friends in Greensboro that love him as well. So we talk a lot about MJ. But he's blowing up, and he's done some late night shows now. He's got a very casual, pensive way of singing. I want to consider him like some amazing singer. I don't know. I'm still not sold that he's like incredible, but people love him.
Can we get MJ Linderman on the Big Hitters pod? I mean, is that
Maybe.
possible?
Yeah, I mean maybe. Interesting guy to follow. We have a lot of MJ Linderman fans who listen to this podcast. All right, anything else, David? You're a great guest. You're good. You got a good delivery and a confident takes on what you talk about.
I want to come back when there's something positive to talk about. That's the key. Let's come back when the Heels are winning. Let's get Pat James on for some college Carolina baseball. I heard UNC baseball could look promising this year. I want to see the Big Hitters pod at the supporting the Diamond Heels. So we'll see.
Yeah, if they make a run, if they're going to Omaha, we'll have Pat James on. All right, man. Appreciate your time. David's also my fantasy football. What would you call you?
A guru.
Fantasy guru. Yeah. I reach out to you when I need trade advice. All right, man. Appreciate your time, dude.
See you.
All right. Here's what everybody's waiting for. Andrew Carter of the News Observer, his second appearance on the Big Hitters Only podcast, brought to you by, we got a sponsor now, Andrew, Delta Spirits. THC-based beverage. It's like a marijuana beverage.
So people have to drink to make this show tolerable.
Use code BHO10 at checkout for 10% off your order. Also comes in a bottle like this. You can add to cocktails or use as an alcohol substitute. Delta Spirits, drinkdeltaspirits.com. All right. Andrew and I, we text occasionally about a lot of different stuff. We were texting yesterday about UNC basketball and wanted to have him come on and give us a PG version of what we were talking about. The state of UNC basketball now. I don't even know their record. They lost by 20 to Clemson on Monday. They have Syracuse on Saturday. They're outside the bubble right now, 14-11, 7-6 in the ACC. Fans are pissed. People are upset. This will be the second season they missed the tournament, kind of third season they're on the bubble. What are the core issues? What are you looking at when you've seen this team play? You've seen them play a couple times in person. You cover the team from a broader standpoint. What are the core issues? What's going on right now with UNC basketball?
Yeah, I mean, it's poor roster construction. It's a group of guys who do not appear to be having fun together. It's a group of guys that do not appear to have ideal chemistry. Feel like that's off. The one thing that you could say about UNC early in the season is that they fought.
Yep.
I covered the Kansas game, great game in Lawrence. It was my first time there. Incredible college basketball environment. They had some tough losses in Maui, Michigan State. Who else did they lose to in Maui? They lost twice. Got down early in those games, fought back. Auburn. Auburn's probably the best team in the country. The thing about UNC now, they get down, and I feel like it's a real struggle for them mentally. I was up at the Pitt game recently. I mean, it was a competitive game throughout. They fell apart down the stretch. Looked like they had no idea what they were doing at the end of that game. The other night against Clemson, competitive for the first 10 minutes. I think it was like a 1-point game. UNC was leading, I think, or was down one, whichever. Clemson goes on a run, and it's over. And so, this team has not improved over the course of the season. I think that's the biggest concern. We can talk about a lot of things with Carolina basketball. To me, one of the key questions is, you take this roster as flawed as it is, they still have good players. I mean, RJ Davis, ACC Player of the Year last year. Powell and Jackson, two of the top 15 freshmen in the country coming in. Seth Trimble, I think, was a top 30, top 40 prospect. Elliot Cadeau was, I think, a top 15 prospect who reclassified. Jalen Washington, maybe not a stud of studs, but was thought to be pretty good when he came in. You give that roster to any number of coaches, and are they this mediocre, to put it mildly? How many people around the country could be maximizing the talent there to a better degree than what Hubert Davis and his staff has done. And again, you mentioned it. We're looking at, and you never know what's going to happen. Look at NC State. Last year they got hot, went on a run. This Carolina team does not have DJ Burns. So I do not think that's particularly likely. You never know what's going to happen, but certainly it appears like they're going to miss a tournament the second time in 3 years. They went on that hot run in Hubert's first year. To me, this is a result overall, and I've written about it a time or two. I've alluded to it. Carolina, I feel like, has just been incredibly resistant to adapt. To kind of get with the program. I think it's fair to wonder for a lot of schools, like, do you want to be a part of what college basketball has become? I think UNC, like it or not, has to be. Like, UNC is not going to say, oh, well, this is not really what we want this sport to be about, so we're going to take a step back. It's not going to happen. It's Carolina. It's a program that demands to be at the forefront of it. And to do that, you have to adapt. Hubert has not adapted. The GM talk now, he should have hired a GM 3 years ago, or 2.5, whatever it was, when, John Shire hired Rachel Baker when he took over for Kay after that Final Four loss, and they've had that in place. And now UNC is just getting with that. Now we hear the talk about hiring a GM, putting in support staff. Why hasn't UNC been doing this? I feel like that really bit them in the portal last year. Whatever happened, whether it's lack of NIL resources, whether it's an inability to close a deal, whether it's selling an outdated, version of a program or a model, it didn't work. To me, this is a lesson in adaptation. And you look at these two rivals in UNC and Duke, and, I don't care what the records are. I think Hubert might have a winning record against Duke. But it's impossible to look at these two programs where they stand today and not come to the conclusion that UNC is just way behind in terms of adapting to both the present of college basketball, where the sport is headed, what it's going to be. John Shire has been way more forward-thinking. It hasn't always translated on the court, particularly against UNC. I know UNC swept them last year, but you got to adapt. You have to have an NIL system in place. You have to have a robust scouting system in place. Cade Tyson, I know other major programs wanted Cade Tyson. I don't mean to pick on the kid. I think by all accounts, he is a great kid. He's trying. He's doing what they ask in practice. But you can't have that be your huge portal get and miss that badly to where they're afraid to play him. Anyway, that's my long rambling answer.
Yeah.
They got to adapt. And to me, they're in this predicament because they've been very slow to adapt, and that's reflected in their roster. And I feel like that's why they're in this situation.
Okay. A lot of things. That was about 6 minutes of just Andrew. All right. So they have
reading one of my stories.
I know. Behind a paywall. All right. They have 7 games left. What if they go 2-5? What if they go 3-4? Do you see any scenario where Bubba Cunningham makes a change? You talk to people.
Look, I'd be really. First off, that's sort of wheels coming off territory. 2-5, 3-4. The ACC is not good.
They have an easy schedule remaining. They have Syracuse State, Virginia, Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech. They should be favored in all of those. Maybe not at Florida State or at Virginia Tech. And they have Duke. Florida State beating Wake Forest last night. So they have an easy schedule to close out the year. So that would be those losses would be really bad if they lose 3 or 4 of those.
I tend to think he gets one more year regardless. Just from talking to people who know people, whatever.
Yeah.
I think UNC really wants him to succeed, and rightfully so. Everyone knows his story. Everyone knows how much he loves Carolina. And
doesn't matter anymore.
Nobody loves Carolina basketball more than Hubert Davis, and that's legit and it's a fact. People there want him to get it right, and I think he's going to get the opportunity to hire a GM. They got to have that person, whoever it is, in that position by the end of the season.
Yesterday,
which for Carolina could be soon. You don't want to go into mid-March without having that lockdown, without having somebody scouting portal prospects, putting whatever needs to be in place to secure some of those guys. Like that needs to happen yesterday.
Yep.
But I think he's going to get an opportunity with, that. I don't know if he's going to keep his staff intact. I have questions about his staff. That's another comparison to Duke, where Shire has surrounded himself with people outside of, his echo chamber, so to speak. And when I look at UNC, it's baffling to me and troubling that, Hubert has insisted it has to be all Carolina guys here. Why? If you're running Apple, why would you say, you know what, I'm only going to hire people who interned here or maybe worked their way up through Apple, where there could be great computer software people at a lot of places. You're limiting your talent pool if you do that. Again, Shire has, he has diversity on the staff in terms of backgrounds. I think that's paying dividends. UNC staff, to me, there's major questions about it. This is at worst, UNC is the third best college basketball program of all time, at worst. They're in the top three. It's probably not number three. You can make the argument they're number one or number two with Kentucky. Throw Kansas in there. Do they have a top three staff?
Who is hiring Hubert? What team, what power conference team is going out and hiring Hubert? If he was in the open market, is like Missouri or a Big East team or Oregon State,
I don't think he would want to coach anywhere else in that hypothetical. I mean, I get the hypothetical. I get the thought exercise. When they hired him, but we all know sort of the dynamics of it. He was Roy Williams' guy. Roy wanted him to have the job. And at the time, we remember Roy termed it as he felt like he wasn't the guy to lead Carolina anymore in this new era. And he felt like Hubert was that guy. But I don't think either Roy or Hubert anticipated what the sport was becoming. And maybe they should have, especially Hubert. NIL wasn't quite what NIL was going to be at that point. In fact, I'm not even sure it wasn't even in place. It was in place that summer. That summer it became a thing, but we all knew it was headed that way. But NIL, purely turned into pay for play. The transfer portal was a thing, but not nearly as robust. And so, should you have anticipated these changes? Probably. But Roy saying he didn't feel like he was cut out for it. I'm not sure if you would have told Hubert what it was going to be in 3 or 4 years, that he would have said he's cut out for it.
Yeah. I mean, Hubert's definitely as old school as Roy is. He's traditional. He sees this as mission work, and that, that you should come to want to play for Carolina and get a degree from Carolina and be developed for 3 or 4 years.
He is, but here's the thing. He is old school, but from a media point of view, I covered Roy, I like most of Roy's tenure, I guess. I was there from 11 through 17, the end of that season. So I covered a lot of, sort of the heart of the Roy era, the middle of it. And Roy, the great thing about covering Roy is you always knew as a beat writer that pretty much what he was saying was true. And if he didn't want to answer a question, he would just say so. But he was so honest. Sometimes he was so honest that I felt bad for some of those guys.
Players.
I remember Bryce Johnson's junior year. I mean, really Bryce Johnson's first 3 years, 2.5. Roy would rip on him relentlessly. Kennedy Meeks, you were there, I think, the night that Roy went on that the trash man analogy, one-arm swingers, basically saying that his guys were trash. And Roy was not afraid to get on guys publicly. Roy was not afraid to throw himself under the bus and say, hey, I stunk tonight. We got out coached. I need to do a better job. As much as Hubert is a disciple of Roy, played for Dean Smith, he loves Dean Smith, he has taken on the complete opposite approach in terms of answering questions, in terms of holding himself and the program accountable. I imagine it's different in private, but it does make it almost impossible to get a read on what he really thinks.
Yeah,
about
it's bizarre, man.
About anything. He's very protective of his players. Look, that's fine. It's one way to do it, but it does create I think, some awkward moments and just a, messaging dilemma where when you're losing, you're not going well. People want to understand why, what's going on. And Hubert doesn't really go into any detail. Like he's very guarded with his thoughts, puts a positive spin on everything. And I'm not sure that's helpful to him.
Yeah. I wonder what it's like in the locker room. If he's hard on them in the locker room after losses, after bad practices, or if it's sunshine and rainbows. Like, how is he behind closed door? Is he the same?
It's tough
Is he
to get a
positive?
read on that.
Yeah, I wonder.
I think he's very passionate, obviously. And again, no one cares more about the history, tradition, about UNC basketball more than Hubert Davis. But like when you're struggling, man, like people want to see you fired up and people want to see you saying, like this is unacceptable that we played this way. This is unacceptable that so-and-so made a mistake, should not be happening. And, I'll say like when Bryce heard that from Roy for 2.5, 3 years, like the next year, his last year, he was an All-American.
Yeah.
Kennedy Meeks got better because they took that hard coaching. And maybe Hubert is as hard behind closed doors, but there's no indication that he is.
Yeah. One coach that I really like how he does his press conferences, if you have a chance to watch those, is Steve Forbes. I've been to a couple Wake Forest games this year, having moved to Greensboro. Steve Forbes is the same after a loss as he is after a win. It doesn't change win or lose. He's the same personality. That's what you want. Roy was kind of the same way. Like Roy would rip on his team after a win and after a loss. Steve Forbes is brutally honest and like funny and just like he kind of just tells you everything. It's very refreshing. It's a big change from the coach Wake had before that. Andrew, I want to ask you, what was that guy's name? Danny Manning.
Danny Manning.
Who was horrible to work with, apparently. All right, so I think keeping Hubert is like delaying the inevitable. I just don't think, in my opinion, he's like it. So like the point, like what does another year do? If you get a general manager, if you bring in, if it's going to be like 4 or 5 or 6 transfers, if you add to the staff or maybe switch up an assistant coach and give Hubert all the resources he needs to be successful, like if you still don't have a good in-game X and O's coach who can't motivate, like what's the point in keeping him around? Like what do you think, what has to happen next year where it's going to be much better? And then the next year after that, like I think it's just delaying the inevitable. Better to fire a year early than to fire a year late is kind of how I would approach this.
If you've made up your mind, I agree with you. I mean, if you're Bubba Cunningham and you've made up your mind that this is not going to work, then I tend to agree, as painful as that is, because I think you're absolutely right. It becomes a question of, well, what is good enough in terms of next year? And let's say next year is better, but it's not tremendously better. Let's say, they're a tournament team.
Yeah, like a 5 seed, 6 seed.
6, 7 seed. That's still not Carolina's standard. You're in the tournament, but you're still not where you want to be. But you're not going to be bad enough necessarily to justify firing him. If you didn't this year and make the tournament and have a decent year next year, then you have to bring him back the next year. And so it becomes sort of like this perpetual
mediocrity.
No man's land of, well, not great, but not terrible. And so if you want to pull the plug, I think it's fair to have that discussion. But again, I feel like the situation UNC finds itself in, it's really difficult to do that to a guy who, again, is part of your family, so to speak, played there, coached there as an assistant, loves the program, has meant a lot to kids, off the court especially. And people compare it to the Matt Doherty situation. Doherty ran such a toxic program in terms of off the court stuff, and he did himself no favors in terms of coming in, firing office staff, changing a lot of things behind the scenes, rubbing people the wrong way. So when things went haywire on the court, when you had guys complaining about him and their parents complaining about him, it was easy to justify firing Matt Doherty. It's not easy with Hubert. As mediocre or worse as they've been on the court, everyone loves Hubert. Like he's a likable guy. He's as friendly as it gets. I think he has a big heart. I think he cares. And so it's like, it's a predicament to where like everyone wants this to work at UNC. Obviously this year seems like a lost year, but then, one more year, if that's the mindset, it's like, what is good enough? I mean, can they hit everybody in the portal? Do you win the portal lottery, rebuild the roster? And can you get like a 2 seed next year? Can you win the ACC? I mean, they have to take a major step forward next year. And the other thing, too, is the ACC is not good. It's not,
this year.
This year. I mean, I don't think it's going to be great next year unless you have a lot of teams, again, just winning the portal lottery. You're going to have Duke, who's really good. Louisville, their coach, I think, has proven that he gets it in the portal. But what is good enough for Hubert in year 5, assuming he gets that? And that's a great question. Like, how do you have those clearly defined goals?
Yeah. I'm saying like next year, the standard for UNC is like, all right, it's gonna be a 1 seed or a 2 seed, or maybe a down year, like 3, 4, 5 seed, like primarily be a top 25 team. And like, I don't know how good it has to be next year to justify keeping them. Like, if they're gonna have to hit so hard in the portal because they're not returning anybody. Like, usually the good teams, traditionally with Roy Williams coach teams, like they return 3 or 4 starters and they plug in a freshman, or they can plug in a transfer now and they're ready to go. Next year, they're going to be having to replace potentially 4 starters and then build depth too through the portal. You're bringing in 3 freshmen. I don't think, Drake, Powell, or Ian Jackson are going to stay. You may lose some other starters. You're definitely losing RJ Davis. So, like, I think it's a very tall task to get UNC next year to where it needs to be, where you're like, all right, Hubert's the guy. I just think it's every year we're going to be in this perpetual, like, all right, is it good enough? Does he get another year? And then you're dealing with recruiting. Then you have coaches recruiting against you, constantly battling that, which coaches in the past have had to deal with as well when you're on the hot seat, like in football, for example. All right, you've watched Duke a couple times. How good is Duke this year? Actually, I want to ask this: how bad is State? Have you seen them play a lot? They're
I've not.
a tailspin. Can you imagine covering that team?
I had, yeah, like I keep tabs here and there. I think I've seen him play live since the Carolina game.
Yeah,
over there, not long after. Speaking of bad roster construction, it's like they don't have really. I'm not going to say they don't have any starting level ACC guys. I think they have some guys who would start on your average ACC team. But, I mean, it was a question going into the year, like you lose the 2 DJs and Burns and Horn, then who is going to be that guy for State? They don't have that guy.
Yeah.
They don't have anything close to that guy. I mean, at least with UNC, it's like they have some dudes at times, you would think at least. I mean, RJ Davis, Ian Jackson was that player for a time. I mean, State has, nobody. And losing the way they lost against Louisville, I saw a little bit of that game on TV. Like, it looked like maybe there were 7,000 people there, if that.
Yeah.
And it was such a magical, amazing run for State last year that I thought, surely, like, this buys Kevin Keats some time. It's going to get people off his back. And it's like the only scenario in which that wasn't going to be the case is playing out. Like, they were going to have to be awful this year for people to be mad at him again. And that's exactly what's happened. They've been awful and people are mad again. And it's sort of the same conversation in a different way. It's like, if you feel that strongly that it's not going to work and you have to make a move, do you do it now? With his situation, it's different because they re-upped his contract. They had an automatic thing kick in when they made the Final Four, when they won the ACC. So it's going to cost a ton of money for them to buy him out. Like, they can't really afford to fire him this year. So I think just financially speaking, he's going to get another year. But it's looking more and more sort of like a Paul Hewitt dynamic, where Paul Hewitt led Georgia Tech to, I think, the 2004 Final Four.
Yep. Luke
wasn't ever a very good coach, and he was gone not long after that. And like, barring some sort of like all these teams really have to rebuild every year. Is the State going to do that? There's no indication. But I feel bad for some of those kids who were on the team last year because, Jaden Taylor, O'Connell, who hit that shot. It's
They've lost
It's a mess. It's a mess.
They've lost 9 straight.
Yeah, and I didn't even realize this. And you think about, I mean, NC State has had some bad basketball seasons, as we all know, for like the past 30 years. But that ties the school record for the longest losing streak in school history, 9 games.
Hang the banner.
So I don't know who they have next.
Boston College.
Yikes. And then they play Carolina in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, I'll be at that game. You gonna go to that game?
I'm going to be there, man.
Let's do it.
Because you think about where these programs were like 11 months ago before that. They're playing each other for the ACC championship.
I know.
And now it's like, and now it's like the loser leaves town sort of dynamic.
Yeah. They come in town early that day, set up at Al's Burgers coffee shop maybe as well. Spend a whole day in Chapel Hill.
That sounds nice.
All right, good stuff, Andrew. I mean, it's tough talking about this Carolina team. You kind of the same conversation after every game. It's going to be a close game. They're going to win by 1. They're going to lose by 1. They're going to get blown out by Duke or Clemson or any team that's worth their salt. It's kind of what it is. State is going to miss the ACC tournament. I forgot. I didn't realize.
That means they can't lose their title then, as long as they don't play.
Exactly. All right, man. Appreciate your time, guys. BHO 10 for Delta Spirits. We appreciate your time listening.
I'm going to get some of that.
Yeah. Appreciate your time listening to the Big Hitters Only podcast. Rate, review, subscribe. We appreciate Andrew's time. Appreciate producer Connor on the back end. And, of course, David and Neil, who came on before you, Andrew. Any last words, big dog?
Man, it's just an honor to be on with you all the time. Big Hitters Only forever.